Commander Thaddeus Voss scratched his stubbled chin as he gazed through the viewport at the gleaming spires of the Galactic Academy. After humanity's recent admission into the Federated Cosmic Alliance, he had been selected as the first human to attend the elite military training program. The massive station orbited a binary star system, its architecture a blend of dozens of alien engineering styles that made Earth's most impressive structures look like children's toys. "Approaching docking sequence, Commander," the ship's AI announced. "Atmospheric composition has been adjusted to Terran specifications in your assigned quarters." "Thank you, Navy," Thaddeus replied, straightening his uniform. 6 months of intensive xenocultural training hadn't fully prepared him for the reality of being surrounded by alien species who considered humans Deathworlders. Creatures evolved on a planet so harsh that most galactic citizens considered Earth practically uninhabitable. As the airlock hissed open, 3 figures stood waiting. The tallest, a willowy being with iridescent skin that shifted between blues and purples, stepped forward. 4 eyes blinked independently as it regarded him. "Commander Voss of Earth, I am High Instructor Quilzani." Its translator produced perfectly accented English. "These are my colleagues, Training Officer Mepthrix and Tactical Specialist Dawn Rule." Mepthrix, a stocky reptilian with armor-like scales, barely acknowledged him. The third alien, covered in short golden fur with 6 limbs arranged around a cylindrical torso, made a gesture that Thaddeus recognized as the universal greeting. "An honor to meet you all," Thaddeus said with a respectful bow. "I hope to represent humanity with dignity." "You are the first of your kind here," Quilzani noted. "Your species' admission was controversial. Many believe humans too aggressive and unpredictable for galactic society." Thaddeus maintained his diplomatic smile. "We've been called worse. Indeed, your planet's gravity alone would crush many sentient beings. The atmospheric toxicity, extreme temperature variations, and abundant predators have shaped your kind into something concerning to the Council." Mepthrix made a sound like grinding metal. "The human should be categorized as a Class 7 threat. Species, not a potential officer." Before Thaddeus could respond, the station trembled violently. Emergency lights flashed as an announcement blared in multiple languages. "What's happening?" Thaddeus asked, instinctively bracing himself against the wall. Dawn Rule's fur bristled. "Station-wide gravitational stabilizer malfunction. This section could experience up to 3G fluctuations." The aliens immediately looked distressed, their bodies clearly not designed for such conditions. Without hesitation, Thaddeus moved to support Quilzani, who was already struggling to remain upright. "Rest easy," he said, effortlessly taking the alien's weight. "This is about what I'd experienced during a standard workout back home." As the gravity increased further, Thaddeus found himself supporting 2 of his new instructors while explaining basic techniques for enduring high-gravity environments, all while casually laughing at what, to him, was merely an inconvenience. The look of disbelief in their alien eyes told him everything. His career at the Academy was going to be interesting, to say the least. 3 weeks into training, Thaddeus found himself standing before a holographic projection of a Class 4 neutron star system. Around him, 23 alien cadets from various species watched as Instructor Quilzani presented the day's tactical assessment. "The simulation will test your decision-making under extreme radiation pressure," Quilzani explained. "Your task is to navigate a standard scout vessel through the system's corona to retrieve a distress beacon while avoiding lethal exposure." The alien students murmured anxiously. Even through translator implants, Thaddeus could sense their apprehension. "The exercise is considered advanced," continued Quilzani, 4 eyes blinking in sequence, "but necessary for graduation. The average success rate is approximately 17%. No student has completed it on their first attempt in the past 3 cycles." Thaddeus examined the holographic representation, mentally calculating trajectories. Each cadet would enter a simulation pod that would replicate all physical sensations of the mission, including radiation effects, which would be experienced as increasing levels of pain. Mepthrix, the reptilian instructor who had made no effort to hide his disdain for humans, gestured toward Thaddeus with a clawed hand. Perhaps our Deathworlder colleague should demonstrate first. Show us how Earth's primitive space program would handle such delicate maneuvering. Several cadets made sounds that translated as nervous laughter. Thaddeus recognized the challenge for what it was, an attempt to humiliate the newcomer. "I would be honored," he replied evenly, stepping forward. The simulation pod sealed around him, and Thaddeus found himself at the controls of an unfamiliar spacecraft. The neutron star loomed ahead, its gravitational pull already affecting the ship's systems. As the mission began, warnings flashed across the console as radiation levels climbed. To the observing alien's astonishment, Thaddeus didn't immediately attempt to avoid the radiation. Instead, he adjusted course directly through a section that glowed bright red on their monitors, indicating lethal exposure levels. "Is he insane?" Donril whispered to Quilzani. "No species can withstand that radiation belt." Inside the pod, Thaddeus gritted his teeth against the simulated pain. On Earth, he had been part of a specialized unit trained to operate in nuclear disaster zones. The agony was familiar, almost nostalgic. When the pod finally opened 37 minutes later, Thaddeus emerged with the virtual beacon retrieved and a new Academy record. Sweat soaked his uniform, but he wore a casual smile that unsettled his alien classmates. "Fascinating approach," Quilzani remarked, studying the trajectory data. "You deliberately absorbed near-lethal radiation to create the shortest possible retrieval path. On Earth, we call it taking one for the team," Thaddeus replied with a chuckle. "The mission parameters prioritized beacon retrieval over crew safety. But the pain..." Mepthrix began, unable to comprehend how the human had endured it. Thaddeus shrugged. "Pain is just information. Sometimes you have to work through it." His casual dismissal of what would be incapacitating agony for most species left the instructors, exchanging concerned glances. In their eyes, he could see a growing realization. Perhaps humans weren't just physically durable, perhaps they possessed a psychological resilience that was equally alien to them. The orbital training facilities, recreational hub buzzed with alien conversations as Thaddeus entered. After 2 months at the Academy, he had developed something of a reputation, part curiosity, part concerning anomaly. A few cadets nodded respectfully as he passed, others shifted uncomfortably. Thaddeus had grown accustomed to the isolation. He found a quiet corner and pulled out his personal device, scrolling through messages from Earth. The latest transmission from his younger brother showed his nephew's first steps, a reminder of home that brought a smile to his face. "Communication from your hive?" A melodic voice interrupted his thoughts. Thaddeus looked up to see Lyrics, a photosynthetic humanoid whose leaf-like skin filtered the station's artificial light. Among his classmates, she had been the most curious. "About Earth, my family," he corrected gently. "My brother's son just learned to walk." "Fascinating." Lyrics's tendrils undulated in what he recognized as excitement. "Is the offspring already capable of self-defense?" The question was so earnest that Thaddeus couldn't help but laugh. "He's still learning the basics. Walking comes before combat training on Earth." Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion at the center of the hub. A group of Veldorian cadets, massive crustacean-like beings, known for their territorial nature, had surrounded an Antillian youth, barely half their size. "You contaminated our meditation chamber with your spores," growled the largest Veldorian, its translator failing to mask the aggressive clicks of its native language. The Antillian trembled visibly. "An accident. My species releases spores involuntarily when what? When frightened, the Veldorian's pincers flexed menacingly. Like now? Thaddeus noted the instructors were nowhere to be seen. Station regulations prohibited interference in cultural disputes, a policy that supposedly encouraged species to resolve differences diplomatically. This could get ugly, Lyrics whispered. Veldorians are apex predators on their homeworld. Without hesitation, Thaddeus stood and approached the confrontation. Is there a problem here? The Veldorian turned, compound eyes narrowing. Human, this does not concern you. Actually, it does, Thaddeus replied calmly. Academy Regulation 27B specifically prohibits intimidation tactics outside of sanctioned training exercises. The Veldorian made a sound like rocks grinding together. Laughter. Your species has been in space for what, 2 centuries? You lecture me on regulations? When the Veldorian's pincer shot out toward the Antillian, Thaddeus moved with a speed that stunned the observers. His hand caught the massive appendage mid-strike, stopping it cold. On Earth, Thaddeus said, still smiling despite the tremendous pressure against his palm, we have an expression, pick on someone your own size. The Veldorian attacked with full force, a movement that would have shattered the bones of most species. Instead, the assembled aliens watched in disbelief as the human deflected each strike with practiced precision, never losing his oddly cheerful demeanor. When security finally arrived, they found Thaddeus standing unharmed, the Veldorian breathing heavily in confused frustration. Commander Voss was protecting another student, Lyrics explained to the officers. The human laughed while doing it like he was enjoying himself. As the security team led the Veldorian away, Instructor Quilzani approached, having reviewed the hub's surveillance feed. You find combat amusing, Commander? The instructor asked, tone somewhere between fascinated and disturbed. Thaddeus shook his head. Not the combat itself, but on Earth tense situations often benefit from a little humor, keeps the adrenaline manageable. The concept of laughing during what should be a terrifying confrontation appeared incomprehensible to the gathered aliens. Once again, their perception of humanity had been challenged in ways they struggled to process. Red alert klaxons blared throughout the station. Thaddeus bolted upright from sleep, years of military training kicking in before consciousness fully returned. The emergency announcement cycled through 17 languages before reaching English. Critical hull breach detected in Sector 7. All personnel evacuate to designated safety zones. This is not a drill. Thaddeus dressed quickly, checking the station schematic on his terminal. Sector 7. The xenobiology labs and primary life support systems. The breach couldn't have occurred in a worse location. The corridor outside his quarters was already filled with panicked cadets and staff members rushing toward evacuation points. Rather than joining them, Thaddeus moved against the flow, heading toward the breach. Commander Voss! Tactical Specialist Dawn Rule called out. 6 limbs, gesturing frantically. Evacuation protocol is mandatory. The breach is near the main oxygen recycling system, Thaddeus replied, continuing his purposeful stride. If it fails completely, the emergency systems won't sustain the station population for more than 3 hours. Before Dawn Rule could protest, further Thaddeus disappeared down an access corridor. The station's artificial gravity fluctuated as he approached Sector 7, a sign of critical power issues. Emergency bulkheads had sealed most routes, but Thaddeus located a maintenance shaft that remained accessible. Inside Sector 7, chaos reigned. A micrometeor penetration had damaged not only the hull, but also severed coolant lines to the life support systems. 3 technicians, 2 Moravian engineers, and 1 Phaelosian specialist were desperately attempting repairs while wearing emergency atmosphere suits. Status report? Thaddeus called, grabbing an emergency suit from a wall unit. The lead engineer, Raxel turned in surprise. Containment failures cascading through life support, atmosphere venting through multiple micro-breaches, primary coolant system compromised. Thaddeus assessed the situation quickly. The coolant lines need to be rejoined before the processes overheat. Impossible, Vraxel's translated voice conveyed despair. The breach created a vacuum corridor between us and the manual override. Even in suits, the radiation from the damaged converters would kill most species within minutes. Thaddeus checked the suit's specifications and made quick calculations. Earth radiation levels can reach much higher than this in certain disaster zones. I can make it through. You would never survive the exposure, protested the Phalosian. And the temperature in the corridor has dropped to near absolute zero from decompression. To the alien's astonishment, Thaddeus let out a genuine laugh. You forget where I come from. Humans have climbed mountains in temperatures approaching this, without technology. We're surprisingly resilient. Before they could argue further, he secured his helmet and entered the airlock. The moment the inner door opened to the damaged corridor, warning sensors in his suit screamed alerts. The combined threats of vacuum, radiation, and extreme cold would indeed kill most sentient species in the galaxy. For Thaddeus, it was simply another day at the office. When he reached the override controls, his exposed suit surfaces had already crystallized from the cold. His movements grew sluggish as his body temperature dropped despite the suit's insulation. Working quickly, he manually reconnected the primary coolant feeds and rerouted power to the atmospheric stabilizers. By the time emergency teams reached him 20 minutes later, Thaddeus was sitting with his back against the bulkhead, laughing softly to himself, despite physical symptoms of severe hypothermia and radiation exposure. What could possibly be amusing about this situation? Asked the medical officer treating him. Thaddeus, through chattering teeth, replied, just thinking, on Earth, this would barely qualify as an adventure vacation. The Academy's Grand Hall had never hosted a ceremony quite like this one. Beneath its arching crystalline dome, representatives from 87 species gathered in their ceremonial attire, creating a tapestry of colors, textures, and biological diversity unimaginable to most humans. At the center of it all stood Thaddeus. Voss, still recovering from his injuries 6 weeks after the station crisis. The medical staff had been astonished by his body's resilience, healing at rates that defied their xenobiological models. High Commissioner Telraxus, ancient and revered, member of the founding species, hovered at the podium. Its translucent body pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that conveyed emotion more clearly than any translator could manage. We gather today, began the Commissioner, voice resonating through the hall, to acknowledge an unprecedented act of courage and capability. When crisis threatened our Academy, the embodiment of galactic cooperation, it was not our advanced technology that saved us, but the actions of our newest member species. Thaddeus stood at attention, uncomfortable with the formality, but understanding its importance for human-alien relations. Commander Thaddeus Voss of Earth, continued Telraxus, knowingly entered conditions that our medical consensus deemed absolutely fatal. Not only did he survive these conditions, but witnesses report he did so while displaying a behavioral anomaly his species calls humor in the face of death. Murmurs rippled through the assembly as Quilzani stepped forward, the instructor's usually impassive features now set in solemn respect. The Academy Council has reviewed all evidence from the incident, as well as Commander Voss's performance. During his abbreviated training, we have reached a unanimous conclusion. Thaddeus prepared himself for either commendation or criticism, both equally likely in the complex world of interspecies politics. Humanity's classification will be formally amended in the Galactic Registry, Quilzani announced. The designation Deathworlder remains accurate but incomplete. We propose the additional classification guardian species. Surprised whispers filled the hall as Telraxis raised 4 appendages for silence. In our 10,000 years of cooperation, the Federation has encountered species evolved for aggression, for survival, for intelligence. But never have we witnessed a species that faces mortal danger with such casualness. This psychological trait, combined with your physical resilience, represents something unprecedented. Thaddeus cleared his throat. With respect, High Commissioner, humans don't consider ourselves particularly special. We simply do what needs doing. Precisely, Telraxis replied. And therein lies the quality that has moved this council. You view extraordinary actions as ordinary duty. Your species laughs in situations where others would surrender to panic or despair. The Commissioner floated closer. The Federation needs this quality. For millennia, we have advanced through cooperation and technological progress, but we have perhaps lost something essential along the way. The ability to face the universe's harshest realities without flinching. With ceremonial gravity, Quilzani presented Thaddeus with a symbol rarely bestowed, a crystalline emblem that shimmered with internal light. Commander Voss, you are hereby appointed as the first human liaison officer to the Federation Defense. Initiative, your first assignment, establish a training program to teach other species what your kind seems to know instinctively, how to face the impossible with determination, and yes, even with laughter. As the assembly erupted in the various sounds of approval unique to each species, Thaddeus accepted the emblem, with a smile that his alien colleagues had come to recognize not as aggression, but as the uniquely human expression of finding joy. In challenge, I accept this honor on behalf of all humans, he said, and I promise that this is just the beginning of what we can contribute to the Federation. Later, as delegates from across the galaxy approached to speak with him, Instructor Mepthrix, who had once viewed him with suspicion, asked the question many were thinking, how do you do it, human? How do you laugh in the face of certain death? Thaddeus considered the question seriously before answering. On Earth, we have a saying, laugh in the face of danger, then run like hell. Humor isn't just entertainment for us, it's survival. When everything seems darkest, laughter reminds us that we're still alive, still fighting. He gazed out through the Grand Hall's viewport at the stars beyond, the same stars that looked down upon Earth, now just one world among thousands in humanity's expanding horizons. The universe is terrifying, he concluded. Always has been. But humans learned long ago that terror doesn't have to paralyze you. Sometimes the most defiant act is simply to laugh and keep going. The aliens around him nodded slowly, not fully understanding, but beginning to glimpse why humans, these strange, resilient Deathworlders with their inexplicable laughter, might be exactly what the galaxy needed. And somewhere in their ancient wisdom, they recognized a truth older than any of their civilizations. Sometimes, the most powerful force in the universe is not technology or numbers, but simply the unwillingness to accept defeat, a quality that seemed to be humanity's birthright among the stars.